Austin from Solana Foundation. My name is Jack from Coin98. It was great to meet you today in Solana Hacker House in Ho Chi Minh City. And thank you for agreeing to participate in this interview to share some of the interesting insight in crypto. So are you ready?
Yeah, certainly. Happy to be here.
Okay, so first question. What are the opportunities that Solana can see in the current market? And what is your view in the crypto landscape at the moment?
Yeah, it's been a pretty tumultuous year, both last year and this year. I think especially the Solana community has been through a lot. But what's really good to see, what's really exciting to see is that the community has come together incredibly well. There's more validators now than there was in the beginning of 2023 or even in November of 2022. And the energy out of Breakpoint, which is the annual conference we do each year, is really strong. And so I was recently in Turkey for a Hacker House there. We had over 1,500 people come out and attend, developers building on the network. We're here in the Ho Chi Minh City Hacker House in Vietnam, and we have over 1,000 people registered, and it's been really awesome to see everyone kind of excited about building on the network.
Okay, the question I think it would be more likely with technology in Solana. So I can see that there's a lot of your competitors. I can see that like Polygon, they run Subnet, or Avalanche, they run Subnet, or Optimism, they have Substack. So what is your view about? So it's just like a super gen narrative.
Yeah.
So will Solana join that super gen narrative, or we will focus on one gen only?
So most of what these other chains are trying to do is they're trying to make technology that's slow, faster, by making multiple copies of it. This is called sharding, right? At the end of the day, a layer 2 is basically a sharding environment where you're offloading transactions and you're offloading state somewhere else to try and make it faster. Solana's thesis is that you should build the fastest possible network that operates in one global state. And so one global state is what made Ethereum what it is today, right? It is the composability where one program can establish trust with another program. The minute you introduce sharding or layer 2s or subnets or anything like that into the equation, you break that fundamental composability that you see in the ecosystem. And that's not to say that people won't figure out how to build DeFi on these other chains at some point, but it's much harder because the trust assumptions you have to make are much different. So building in one global state, and Solana is still the fastest blockchain out there.
Yes, I must confirm that.
Yes, and that advantage I think is really strong because what we're seeing is a lot of these new chains, they're optimizing for one or two things. Solana's thesis is that if it can be the best general purpose blockchain environment, it's going to be a place developers want to build. And so far we've seen that. The Electric Capital report that came out at the end of December shows that Solana has the fastest growing developer ecosystem and is the number 2 in total number of developers. So it's been really great to see.
What I must say that Solana is doing the best is that they are building an ecosystem that there's a lot of layer and layer. And when another applications or another projects that they want to build in the Solana ecosystem, they have the infrastructure. They have a strong infrastructure, and that is, I think, is the only things that Solana have do the best comparing to other competitors. And next is the question about how to bring mass adoption, how to bring a lot of people get into that chain. Because right now, we can see that a lot of people are using Solana chain right now. But we could see that in the real world, there's still a lot of people that don't know what is Solana blockchain is. So what is the strategy? How can you have a strategy to bring that number of people into Solana blockchains?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people out there who have tried to form really like one or two really big partnerships, right? There's like, oh, we're going to try and get Instagram creators on board. We're going to try and get, large Web2 companies on board. And I think if you look at the data, those projects have largely been unsuccessful. The stuff that is actually generating real users in blockchain is stuff that you can't build in Web2. It's not a Web2 connector into blockchain. It's DeFi teams, it's NFT projects. It's sometimes much smaller communities that like The business model of Web 2 requires the biggest audience possible and the most data in order to sell ads.
Oh,
And
this was a different view.
it's a totally different design
yeah.
in Web 3. Like the advantages of Web 3 are you can have a great business with 10,000, 100,000, 1 million users, and that can be an incredibly popular and powerful protocol. You know, if you look at Ethereum, there's very few users of Uniswap on a numerical basis, but Uniswap is a fantastic success as a protocol. So for Solana, it's less about finding one or two big things to onboard, you know, the entire community of Twitter or something like that. It's much more about helping provide support and grants and development to, you know, 10,000 smaller projects that are all going to build something really compelling to certain communities, and then people are going to are going to experience what it's like to be a user on Solana, and maybe they come in for step in, and then they start playing around with Orca and DeFi, or they come in for one NFT project and they start playing around with other things built on the network. And so I think it's that sort of it's like building a city, right? If you plan a city, it usually goes worse than if you just let people build things and you see what happens.
Oh. I think Solana have one of the unique way right now, because you have expand to the mobile, like mobile platform.
Yeah.
So why you plan to expand in mobile platform, and why there's a lot of great competitors like Apple with iPhones,
Yeah.
Google, they even have Google phone, but it was not really successful. So why Solana is choosing that way, and how can they bring the value for the Solana blockchains?
Yeah, so most of the world interacts with the internet through a mobile phone. Most of my interaction, I have a laptop, I have a desktop, I have a smart TV. Most of my interaction with the world is through a mobile phone. And especially when you look at more developing markets, most of Africa does not own a computer, right? They own mobile phones, right? And that is, so right now, blockchain is pretty much locked to the desktop. It's stuck in the Chrome browser as a little extension in the corner. We want to be able to bring blockchain to as native applications running natively on Android phones. And we think that the Solana mobile stack, which is an open source software stack, is the best way to accomplish this. Now, to be clear, the goal is not to sell 100 million phones.
Focus on the right customer.
It would be awesome if we sold 100 million phones. The goal is actually to prove to Google and Huawei and Samsung and all these other companies that already make phones that Web3 is something they should build natively into these phones. The same way that something like NFC or even cameras on phones, or, you know, all these other things we now see as ubiquitous to what a phone is, they started out as something that was only on one or two weird phones, right? Folding phones started out as a weird niche, and now everyone's making a folding phone. Our hope is that the Solana mobile stack gets adopted by developers all around the world, and that they put it on their own phones. If you're an OEM manufacturer, you can take the Solana mobile stack and you can add it to your Android phone.
Oh.
That's the real play here. It's not that we sell phones ourselves, it's that this is a compelling platform that every other manufacturer takes up, and maybe even puts Solana mobile out of business.
Wow, it was great view, I think so. And there's a question that I think not just us, but a lot of people in Vietnam or all around the world. We know that FTX and also Solana have a great connection with each other. However, how did Solana overcome the FTX crisis moment?
Yeah.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you have overcome?
Yeah, so the FTX collapse was sort of seen as something that impacted Solana more than it actually did. So Sam Bankman-Fried was an early supporter of the network, and when the team at FTX decided to build Serum on-chain, this was the first central limit order book built on a blockchain. And it was an incredible piece of technology. And, you know, that was the last real thing I think FTX built on Solana. After that, their interest shifted. They started to try and play politics in Washington, D.C., and you know, we didn't really work with them very closely apart from like a 1-year period in there. But SBF was the person that put Solana on the map. And so there was sort of this perception that there's a very close relationship. There wasn't actually. FTX invested more money in Aptos and more money in Polygon than they actually invested in Solana. But there was this optical idea that the network was very close for some reason. So, you know, what I'll say is that after the collapse of FTX, there's actually more validators on the network now than before.
Oh, so it's really more centralized?
Yeah, so the network's more decentralized than it was before, and this really shows that FTX was not critical to the Solana network in any way. It certainly played an important role putting Solana on the map, but in no way was it, important for the day-to-day running and operations of the network.
I think Solana have successfully said that FTX Solana chain is not controlled by FTX.
No, not at all.
I think we will have a last question.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question is that right now there's a lot of trends, or we can call narrative in crypto, like DeFi, NFT, and Metaverse, and also we can call web3 games. So how can Solana adapt all of those trends, and what did Solana Foundation support the projects to motivate them to build on the Solana blockchains?
Yeah, DeFi across the board is having a hard time right now. If you look at the TVL on all major chains, it's down. If you look at the user numbers, they're down. This is sort of to be expected in a climate where there's rising interest rates and that people feel like DeFi is riskier than other opportunities. I think DeFi is actually probably less risky than a lot of other opportunities, especially we've seen in the United States with the collapse of a few banks recently. DeFi is actually held up very strong compared to banks.
Because it's transparency.
Exactly. So, that being said, the real opportunity now is to build more complicated DeFi products on Solana. Because Solana is so fast and it's so cheap to use, you can build more complicated financial instruments. And that's, I think, where a lot of the new opportunity lies. If you look at things like gaming on Solana, it's been a massive success in terms of the number of games that are building on the network. I think we have the most games of any blockchain at this point, which is really cool. But the one I'm particularly excited about is this idea of decentralized physical infrastructure networks, otherwise known as token incentivized physical infrastructure. This is stuff like Helium and Hivemapper and these sort of networks of wireless networks and all sorts of other kinds of technologies that incentivize people to put infrastructure up in their own house, in their apartment, to put dash cams.
That is the new terms. I think that is the
Yes.
new term that we could find out and also give some of the information for the community. So I think that is all of our interview. Thank you for a lot of sharings and a lot of terms that we could find out in the future. Hope that next time Solana Foundations come to Vietnam, we can see a lot of change, not just in Vietnam community, but also in the all Solana ecosystem. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.